So my name is Rachel and I'm here today to do some LGBT plus recommendations of like great books to read. So if you have been watching my channel, you will know I did this for mental health books, and I want to do this for LGBT plus books and also feminism books. They are three topics that are very important to me, and so yeah, I just want to make some videos recommending some great books and read some more myself anyway. If you have any recommendations for them, please comment them down below because I love them. But yeah, I'm just going to get started. So I mentioned 5 books in a video just because any more than that, the video is going to be way too long. And so yeah, I'm just going to get straight into it. The first one I wanted to mention was Camilla by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. This is number one interesting because it is a piece of vampire fiction that predates Dracula, which is pretty awesome. It was published serially between 1871 and 1872, and it basically follows a young girl who becomes friends with Camilla, and Camilla is a vampire, as you might expect. But the really cool thing about this is there is a lot of lesbian themes within this book. Camilla has quite clearly had relationships with other women in the past and wants a sexual relationship with our main character Laura, and it is just fantastic. It's a really good book. It's really cool that these themes were in a book in the 1800s. Once you have read it, if you want more like that, there is a web series called Camilla, and they also did a film recently, and it's very cool how they've done it. It's very different from traditional media because it is like a TV show, but it's very short, and yeah, it's very cheesy, but it is quite good. It's quite good how they've adapted it. So yes, there is that. Back to a less fun story. We have Giovannis Room by James Baldwin. Now, this was published in 1956 and follows our main character David as he visits Paris. So his girlfriend is in Spain, considering whether she wants to get engaged, be married, all that sort of stuff. And he is spending some time in Paris and is with a friend and finds himself in a gay bar in which he meets an Italian bartender, Giovanni, and they basically have a very explicit relationship. David and Giovanni have like an illicit affair, and the story basically follows their affair and the fallout from that. One thing I absolutely adored about this book was the sort of stifling, almost claustrophobic nature of the like narrative, because you have like Giovanni's room. When you are in that room with those characters, honestly, you can like feel how stale the air is, and like it's so stifling. It's really well written and it's such a fantastic book. There's a reason why it's such a classic of the LGBT plus genre, and I adored it. It was absolutely fantastic and really cool to see characters so open. I didn't especially like David in it, our protagonist, but I could kind of see where he was coming from and I understood his mindset. Next we have Twelfth Night by Shakespeare, and this was written, they think, between 1601 and 1602. This is one of Shakespeare's comedies, and it is one of my favourite of Shakespeare's plays. It wasn't when I first read it, but I think about it a lot more often than I do his other plays, and I just look back with such fondness at it. It is so funny. In this play, we follow Viola and Sebastian. They are twins and they are shipwrecked, basically, and Sebastian is thought to have been lost. The great thing and the fun thing about this play is how Shakespeare plays with the gender of these characters. So in it, we do have Viola dressed as a man. But then we have the Duke Orsino being drawn to Viola, but dressed as a man. So he is feeling very, very confused, obviously, because those feelings he thinks he's feeling for a man. And then obviously she goes to the person that Orsino is hoping to be betrothed to, and she is then falling in love with Viola dressed as a man. But then again, we have themes of actually she is falling in love with a woman, and it's just this constant playing with gender and people's attraction and all that sort of stuff, and it is just so fantastic. We are aware of the dressing up that's happening during this play, and it just makes the whole thing so fun. And yeah, I would highly recommend it. It is one of Shakespeare's less serious and more fun plays to read and watch. Next we have The Colour Purple by Alice Walker. This was published in 1982 and won the Pulitzer Prize, which is cool. And maybe I was naive. I did not realise this was an LGBT plus book before I read it. I thought it was a book about race and about slavery and all that sort of stuff. That is what it's like branded as. That's what you always hear about. But actually, it has some very, very strong lesbian themes within the book. And I thought that it was a very beautifully told story. Although it was published in 1982, the story is set in the 1930s, and we follow Cece, our protagonist. She is in a dismal situation. Her father is not very nice, and the man that she marries is not very nice. They are abusive. I'm pretty sure there's rape in there as well, so trigger warning for that. But she basically, I think while she's with her husband, she meets a travelling musician, Shug Avery, and falls head over heels in love with her. Now, for me, I perceived Shug Avery as being bisexual. She is in relationships with men and women. She falls in love with someone, she falls in love with them, she has a relationship with them, and she doesn't really need to know if they're a man or woman to fall in love with them, which I really enjoyed because I feel the same way in my sexuality, and that is something that is very, very underrepresented. I find it very difficult to find people with my sexuality in literature and film, and Shug Avery definitely has a very similar sexuality to mine, so that was really, really cool to kind of feel represented by this book. I wasn't even expecting to be an LGBT plus book, so that was cool. I adore this book. It covers so many fantastic themes. Like, this can be in the LGBT plus recommendations, it could be in racism and like own voices recommendations, it can be feminism recommendation. Oh my god, the feminism in this book is amazing, and it's just one of my personal favourites, and yeah, I would highly, highly recommend it. It is fantastic. And the last book that I wanted to recommend probably comes as no surprise to anyone, but it is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertelli, and this was published in 2015. So this book has a lot of hype surrounding it, but there is a reason for that. It is brilliant. This is the book that has spurred me to read a lot more LGBT plus fiction. I did not realise how important it was to me and how much more accepted it made me feel until I read this book. Reading about this in literature makes it seem so much more normalised, which is what it should be anyway. So it is really cool to read a book like this. We follow Simon, who is gay. There is no question of that in his mind. However, he has not fully come out yet to friends, family, all that sort of stuff. He starts an online relationship with a boy at his school, but he doesn't know who he is. They basically email back and forth. And then another boy at the school finds out and blackmails him to sort of hook him up with one of his friends, for him not to out him to the school. Now, the thing that I loved about this book is that, yes, it covered a lot of LGBT plus topics that were very, very important. It covered things like coming out, it covered things like being outed, it covered things like what people expect your personality to be like once you tell them you're gay. It covered things like parents' reactions. There is this very common thing where people will make aside jokes. It happens with lots and lots of different things and not really realise that they are offending somebody. I know a lot of people make jokes about like something being so sad you feel like you're slitting your wrists, and I find that very offensive a joke to make, having had a self-harm problem, but it is something that is just in culture. People say it a lot more than you would think. This also happens with certain jokes about homosexual people, and so I really enjoyed that was sort of brought into the narrative. I think it's the dad that makes jokes about him being gay in the story, and it brings that into the narrative and sort of talks about it, which is something that happens and is very uncomfortable, and I really liked that was involved. But the thing that I enjoyed the most above everything else was that this book treated the homosexual relationship in it the exact same way it would have been treated in a straight book. The romance, love interest, it is cutesy, it is flirty, it's very innocent, it's just so adorable, and it is exactly what you would read in a fluffy contemporary. And it is a fluffy contemporary, but with LGBT plus characters, and that was so refreshing. I didn't realise how much that doesn't happen. It really does not happen. You don't ever get it treated the same, the relationships, and that is something that really bothers me. So it was really, really cool to read a book that so well represented that area of LGBT plus relationships. And so I would highly recommend Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda. If at this point you haven't read it, you probably have been told enough times to read it if you are on BookTube, and I understand that sometimes when people hype it up so much, it can be like, okay, I'm really not reading that. But this is one I would definitely take a chance on because it is amazing. So yes, they are all my LGBT plus recommendations for today. I will be back with another video soon, but thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!